All right, welcome back to the Atlanta Child Murders Revisited. It is 28 October, and this is going to be ATKID video number 10. And I'm going to do a little different now. I was just thinking it's probably getting boring watching these videos and just seeing a screenshot from Google Maps and listening to me talk about things that I think are really interesting because of the process of discovery. And I was there. So it's fascinating for me, but it may not be fascinating for other people. But still, it's important, I think, to go over the geography, the places, the names, all that, and then I'm going to get into the documents um, because it sets the stage for the Atlanta child murders. Now, some people will come to this and say, well, "When are you going to talk about the Atlanta child murders?" Blah, 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 blah. Well, there is a lot to talk about there. But in order to understand, like I said, you can't understand the Atlanta child murders unless you understand the geography of the Atlanta child murders and then its relationship with the Atlanta child murders, also with Michael Thieves. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back and forth as I go in my videos between site locations and documents until I finish all the site locations I want to go to. And then once I've done to that, then I'm going to go back into the way I used to do it um, with different categories. So let's get into this. We left off at the Omni International. And again, you know, I want to say because it was back in this back corner that right here was where that entrance, I would say that's probably it because I think that's the windows of the McDonald's, if I remember correctly. I believe. I could be wrong. Like, give me a break, folks. I was like 9, 10 years old. It was 50 fucking years ago. I'm just, I haven't been to the Omni International probably since I went to Dragon Con in like 1990, you know? So that's what, 35 fucking years ago? So, but I believe it was right here. This was a door, there was a doorway here and you went through. There was a McDonald's to the right, and then right past that, there was the game room. I think there was something else between McDonald's and the game room, but the game room was pretty close to there. And like I said, I spent a lot of time there. Um, Now, something I don't know if I mentioned this in the last video. So the mythology is that Patrick Baltazar. They even include this in this movie. Is that Patrick Baltazar was walking around with his friend and then he started getting chased by these guys, white guys in a car. Okay. And then they went to a phone booth and then they called the police and it's the killer. It's the killer, like that. And then somehow the other boy disappears and ends up going home and Patrick Baltazar is kidnapped and taken. Okay. And matter of fact, it's such ingrained in mythology that even Patrick Baltazar's brother tried to get a hold of those tapes that had his voice on it. But the problem is, and this is what I have read, is that that incident occurred a few days before Patrick Baltazar disappears. Okay. That, and it wasn't that some mysterious Ku Klux Klan white guys were chasing them. What had happened is over behind here, that way is where Patrick Baltazar lives. Between there and the Omni, there was somebody had put out some furniture on the street. And being mischievous kids, I was like this. If people leave shit out in their front, near the street, that's mine. It belongs to me now. Okay? If you didn't want it to be gone, you wouldn't have stuck it out there, right? So Patrick Baltazar went up and his friend, and they were grabbing the furniture and they were breaking it up, and they were just being kids. That's what kids do. Okay. Well, some white guys near there, either it was their furniture or their yard, or they were driving by or something, saw them and tried to get them to stop. Those guys even called the police on Patrick Baltazar. Okay. And they started chasing them, being mischievous kids. They ran. Okay. They ran off. And there was no, I think there was a phone call that Patrick Baltazar tried to get ahead of the police and say, no, no, these guys are chasing us. We weren't breaking furniture. And then that was it. A few days later, Patrick Baltazar comes by here. He realizes he doesn't have any money. He goes over to where his dad is working at this fish place on the other side of town, of downtown. He gets some money, comes back. It's about 6, 7 o'clock or so. There's no mention of anyone with him. Okay. And that's the last. Well, no one even knows if he went to the Omni International. Okay. All people know is his dad said that's where he said he was going, and then he was going to go home. He was going to go play in the game room and go home. And that his dad said that's what he had done before. So that's where they're assuming that he went. He could have gotten kidnapped anywhere between, like, where his dad's restaurant was. That's all the way on the other side of town, all the way to the Omni here. Now, I'm pretty sure they would have used this entrance because if you just go up this road, okay, that's where Patrick Baltazar lived. If you just go in this door, that's where the game room's at. So that makes sense that that is where people would go. Now, it also makes sense that this is the entrance that Wayne Williams would come into to go to the game room. Okay. And whether I saw Wayne Williams or saw Patrick Baltazar or saw Jimmy Ray Payne or saw any of these guys, I don't remember. It wasn't in my world. Think about how many people you see during the day. You don't look them in the eyes and try to remember their face of thousands of people that you walk by every day, do you? No, you don't. Why would you? You'd be considered weird, a crazy person if you were doing something like that. So I could have been rubbing shoulders with Patrick Baltazar playing my video games in the game room. I could have not been there at all. It could have been a day that, I wasn't there. I believe it was a Friday that it was either Friday night, Saturday morning, he disappeared, from what I remember. I'll have to go back. But that's where it happened right there. Now, another thing, the Omni is right down here past this building. Over here, I don't know if I mentioned this last time. This is the Georgia Convention Center. When Mayor Jackson became mayor in 1974, they had already had plans before Mayor Jackson built the Omni International and the World Trade Center, but Mayor Jackson got the benefits of it and saw the benefits of it. Now, what you'll hear in the mythology is that the reason they had depended on Wayne Williams is because they were losing convention business and people weren't coming because all these kids were getting killed. Well, I tell you, I was here, right here on the front lines, and there was always conventions going on. Every weekend that I was here, there were people, hundreds of people going back and forth. Matter of fact, in 1976, I remember specifically going with my mom and my dad because she got off work, she changed clothes. We went over here to the convention center. I don't know what was going on over there, but I remember specifically going down the escalator, and at the bottom of the escalator was a guy with a big grin, a white guy, and he was shaking everyone's hand as they got off the escalator. And that guy was Jimmy Carter. He was the former governor of Georgia, and now he was running for president. And Jimmy Carter became president because of the backlash against Nixon in 1974. Now, there was Ford who, so it goes, I don't know if I mentioned this last time either, but basically it goes like this. In 1972, Vice President Spiro Agnew got indicted. I think he even went to jail, but was pardoned by Nixon for improprieties, tax stuff, and taking bribes when he was governor of Maryland. So Spiro Agnew is out, and it's either right after the election. Yeah, I think it was right. It was before Watergate, I think. Okay, and maybe 71. I don't remember the timeline exactly. You can go back in Wikipedia if you want to find out. And then he appointed Gerald Ford, a congressman from Ohio or Michigan, and Ford became president. And then because of the Watergate break-in, um, it worked its way up to the president. The president had ordered these break-ins to find out information about anti-war protesters and find out what the Democrats were up to and stuff like that. It was totally unnecessary because he completely wiped out McGovern in 72. But what he really got in trouble for was covering up the scandal, that it didn't lead back to him. He also had some tapes he refused to give up. And so he had to resign. He was going to be impeached. So he had to resign. So about August 1974. And what I find really interesting now, looking back at it, is that while the federal government, Attorney Mitchell was the guy who was the Attorney General Mitchell was the guy who was leading the charge against Thieves. He was all after him. Everything the FBI did was approved by Mitchell in D.C. at the Justice Department. Okay, Mitchell goes to jail because he had aided in the cover-up and the break-ins and all these kinds of things. Okay, and then there was Deep Throat, who was turned out to be the second guy, Mark Felt, in the FBI. And some said that, Hoover dies right before the break-in, about May 1972, and Mark Felt was passed up by Nixon, and Nixon appointed this Navy guy that he was good friends with. And some said that Mark Felt was pissed off at Nixon that he didn't get appointed as director of the FBI, and that's why he turned on Nixon and started telling Bob Woodward and the other guy at the Washington Post everything. Well, while all that was going on, before that was going on, Mitchell was just all ass on trying to bust Thieves, and they couldn't bust Thieves, and it really pissed them off. Okay, and then they got the lead prosecutor, lead federal attorney in the Northern District of Georgia to just go after the case, and they kept going after, just trying to find something. It was finally the IRS, and then they got him on the interstate transportation, but that took like 4 years to finally get him into jail, get a grand jury that would agree and get charged, and get him into court and get convicted. So it's kind of ironic that while we're standing out in front of the Fox Theater in August of 1974 talking about The Godfather and all this, he probably had some hope because Mitchell had gone to jail, the guy that was coming after him, the attorney general, and now the president who was directing Mitchell. It's kind of weird that a crook would be, directing another crook attorney to go after another pornographer crook, But anyway, they're all crooks, But then Nixon's out. So it probably gave, a little bit of hope to Thieves that maybe he could beat the rap. Because now Mitchell's gone, Nixon's gone, the sky's the limit, right? But, luckily our system is broken up where everything doesn't depend on one man like Trump's trying to make it. And that even if one part of the government falls, there's other sections of the government that can still carry out the functions that they're assigned to. Like the Northern District prosecutor is still taking his case after Thieves, and that's what he did. Now, later on, now my mom, what she would also do is when they'd have conventions, they'd have patrols here. And basically, it was down here to keep the prostitutes and the drug dealers and the killers out. Because, this is why I laugh when they say, oh, they were losing convention business. They weren't losing convention business because no killers were coming into this area to kill convention people. It was Wayne Williams laughing at the security guards and coming in this door to put out his flyers to kill kids right past my mom, right past the cops, and nobody knew it. God, my mom, I just wonder, I never asked my mom, did she ever see Wayne Williams at the Omni International? I should ask her that. She probably would have said, oh, all those black guys look the same. You know, that's the way, I guess she would have talked about it. But so this myth about the, you know, getting convention business back is just a bunch of crap. It doesn't make any sense. No guys coming to these conventions, they're staying. Okay, look, if you're coming to a convention, you're staying in the hotel here, you're eating in the restaurant in here, you're going to the bar in there, but you're not care. You don't give a shit about little black kids running around going to the game room, unless you're into that, unless you're looking for that kind of thing. But then you would just hook up with Wayne Williams, right? And he would hook you up in a hotel somewhere, or bring him to your room in the, you know, Wayne Williams could have been bringing some of these kids to some of the conventioners in this room, in this hotel right here. It's not beyond possibility. I don't know about that, but it's not beyond the possibilities. Okay. So later on, in the 80s, we would come here to Dragon Con, Comic Con, all these kinds of cons. Um, then we go to these conventions. It was a lot of auto shows, boat shows. My dad loved the boat shows and the fishing shows. We come here all the time but folks, I would this every weekend. I was down here, and as soon as my mom got off work, a lot of times she tried to arrange it where she worked at night, 11 to 7, or 11 to midnight to 8 or 9, and then she would get off, change her clothes, and we'd go over to one of these conventions or something. My mom never would go to Dragon Con. That was me when I got older. One time, I went to some kind of auto show or something, like 1984, and there was this girl um, that I knew. I went to high school with. I thought she was weird. She had a kind of little crush on me, and I don't know if I should say her name. I'm not going to say her name, but she later on she got really really big in the wrestling World Wrestling Federation. I hate wrestling. But she was one of the hosts. She was this blonde girl. If you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. And that girl, before she got into that, I saw her. She was like Miss Auto Queen. You know those women that they hang out on the cars and stuff like that. And she looked pretty good then. I mean, when I knew her in high school, she had like black makeup and black eyeshadow, and everything was black, 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 and she hung out with this other girl that I knew that became a famous, you know, writer. And I won't get into her name, but she does like these medieval romantic type novels, sort of like Lord of the Rings, but with a lot more magic. It's sort of like Dungeons and Dragons meets Lord of the Ring and Harlequin romances, stuff like that. But her and they were good friends. But I saw her there, and all these guys are waiting, to get a hug and get his autograph. And she sees me and drops her pen, runs over. Oh, Dino! Oh my God, where you been? And all these guys are like, "Who the fuck are you?" Like, and I'm like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Wow, Bonnie, you look totally different. You're not all dressed in black. You're like wearing regular makeup and a bathing suit. Wow." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, I got this new gig." And I said her first name. Anyway, so she was real big, and one thing I could never figure out, she married this co-host of hers that was just like 900 pounds. It was just crazy, but she became like pretty rich or something, doing these TV hosting and all that. But I was never into wrestling, and I was never really into that girl and everything. But we go to Comic Cons here. There was and then I had a friend who got into movies. I had this movie camera my grandfather gave me, and we were like, 76, 77, 78. We're running around making movies. We would make bottle rockets and shoot them up in the air and film them as they came down, as we're chasing them, across the football field at North Clayton. And he got into making films. He was really into horror movies, and so he makes a lot of B horror movies in Atlanta. I think he even worked on The Walking Dead there for a while. Um, but now he does still does movie directing, but not as much. He makes you know if you want a Captain American shield, or if you want a monster mask or something, some rich person wants something like that, he'll make it, and he knows how to do all the plastics and all that stuff. And I remember he used to try all this plastic stuff and this makeup stuff on me, and I thought he was going to poison me or something when I was a teenager. But that's what you do. You experiment with your friends until you can make money, I guess. But that was that. And but yeah, Wayne Williams, I am certain, okay, would park his car down this way, walk up this way, walk through that entrance right there, and then boom, he was into the Omni International. And then let's get a few more pictures in here. Um, Maybe I can get some inside stuff and point it out about the Omni International. But like I said, from 75, 76, definitely 76 to 80, 81, I was down here every weekend because this was where my mom was working. This was her world, okay? And we always parked in this parking lot, and it was just, that was part of life. And when she worked here every weekend. And when she wasn't, it's because we went, on vacation. We went to Jekyll Island. We went to Disney World. We went to Panama City Beach, something like that. If I can just find one of the interior of the building, I would be happy here. I may not be able to find one. Let's try. Well, goddamn, it keeps going right back outside. Um, I may have to turn. Hold on one second. Let me put you on pause, and let me find a good photo here. All right, hold on one second. All right, so here we are. This is inside. So basically, the Omni International is it's a set of buildings like that one right there. And there's another one right here. There's another one here, and there's some more behind it. And there's another one here. So it's about 3 or 4 buildings. And they just basically, instead of leaving them open to the outside, they enclosed them in a frame roof. Okay. So you have this massive interior area right here. Okay. And so, all right. So to go to the parking lot, Marietta Street's that way. The parking lot's that way. There's like, it used to be a WB store. Ted Turner had like uh, TNT and all his, like a little store over there. And you see these massive pillars right here. They hold up everything. There used to be, I believe it was over here, there used to be a movie theater. Now, right here, there used to be a big ice skating rink, and there wasn't this god awful tile. There was mostly like this short carpet. Okay. It was like a short tan type of carpet. And then, of course, they had this really, really long escalator. So when Sid and Marty Krofft opened up, this was the entrance to Sid and Marty Krofft. You'd pay for your ticket, you'd ride this escalator up, you go up, and then you would start riding the rides up here, and you'd work your way down. There was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels of Sid and Marty Krofft, and it was almost all this over here. Now, it went, it only lasted like 1976, And then from like 78, 79, it was mostly empty. And then about 1980, Ted Turner started CNN, and he actually developed it right up there off of like Spring Street, where his WTBS news station was at. And then they moved it over here, I think about 80, 81. I want to say right at the end of the Atlanta child murders was when CNN was in. Okay. So let me see here. It's really hard to get the directions, but I want to say right if we could go this way and take a left, the McDonald's is right there and the game room is right there. And so what my mom would do, there were several security guards, okay, which my mom was like one of the head security guards. And you need several security guards because you have constantly guys walking around all these floors. Now, a lot of times when I first started coming here, I would just wander all over the place. My mom had introduced me to all the security guards. So they all, and I think she gave me like a little badge or Pinkerton badge or some shit like that with my name on it. And so I would literally, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, I'm literally just wandering around all through this place. Now, there's a hotel up above here. There's some offices, business offices, stuff like that. Matter of fact, what was that guy's name? Axum, one of the attorneys for Wayne Williams, actually started a business here in 1981. I think it was some kind of computer business or something that had his name on it as one of the officers, and it was right here at the Omni. But you can see how kids would love this place. I just love this place. You got a game room, you got a McDonald's, you got a movie theater, you got an ice skating rink. There's tons of room to run around, but you couldn't run around inside. They would throw you out, and they would write your name down, and they take a picture of you, and you would be banned. So there are a lot of kids that got banned for horseplay and stuff like that. I never got banned, of course, because I could do whatever I want. And but yeah, that was inside. That was inside. I think they changed it to Omni International. It was Omni International, and then they would change it to CNN Center or something like that. And then I understand CNN is they're leaving it, and it's going to be something else. Who knows? I don't know. But I actually, when I was here in 2002, I went on. They had a tour of CNN. They would take you around in little groups and stuff, and I went on that, and I was trying to figure out, remembering where Sid and Marty Krofft was compared to where CNN was, and it was hard to remember because that's like 30 years later or something. But yeah, it was crazy, and I wasn't thinking about the Atlanta child murders in 2002 when I came here, because I put that behind me. But now, going back and looking, and oh, and then also sometimes I remember one year, like 84, 85. My friends, they rented a room at the hotel here because we had this Comic-Con over at the convention center. So one of them rented the hotel room, and I swear there were like 10 of us, 15 of us, maybe 10 of us in one like double suite. And I'm sure security found out, they would have thrown us out, but um, that was fun. And then I think about 1990, Rob Lowe was at the Democratic Convention, which was at um, the George World Congress Center, and he was staying here in a hotel, and he's in his late 20s, probably early 30s, and he got caught because this girl, she's like 16, 17 years old, but she had an ID that said she was like 18, and so he was having sex with her. He took videotape of her and stuff like that. And I don't think he got in trouble because I think they were able to prove that she had given him false ID. I think he met her in the bar or something like that. And but yeah, I just remember that was a big scandal too. But okay, so let's go someplace else. And I've got the address listed, but I'm not going to look it up. But let me see if I can find it on my own here. Hold on one second. All right. So this is the Omni. As you can see, this back road, it used to go all the way straight out. I think it may be blocked here. Looks like they built a new football stadium there. And but right here at Foundry and Northside Drive, where this parking lot is, or no, I think it was right there. That's where Patrick Baltazar was living. Okay, so it was this was his route. It has to be. He would come this way, go past the Omni, and then he would go down and go over to Cortland, which was right here. Approximately right here is where his dad was working. Okay, I think it was right there. Anyway, but that's where Patrick Baltazar was living at. His family was living there. Um, One thing I just remembered, there's an interview of Patrick Baltazar's stepmother. I believe it's his stepmother. And she's recalling how Patrick's like, oh, I'm going to get that reward money. I'm going to buy us a house and I'm going to catch that killer. And she was talking about how determined he was to catch that killer. So I wondered, though, if we're going with the scenario that maybe Wayne was killing children because to keep them quiet, he was afraid they were going to tell, whether he's being ordered to or he's just doing it. I wonder if somehow that if his stepmother knows about that statement, maybe he's mentioned this to other kids. Other kids have mentioned it to um, Wayne Williams. But Patrick doesn't know that Wayne Williams is the killer. Okay. But when Wayne Williams runs into Patrick, he realizes, oh, he knows Patrick because Patrick's been over to his house before. Okay. So he's like, yeah, Patrick, I'll give you a ride back home. No big deal. Oh, thanks, Wayne. Now, Patrick was alive, I think, for about 3 weeks after he disappeared. And then they found him. They found him up off Executive Parkway off of I 85 in northeast Atlanta. They found his body near, well, I'll go over this in more detail, but they found his body near a creek there. Um, it's almost like it's almost like someone had taken him out of the a car and rolled him down the embankment, hoping the body would roll into the creek, but the body didn't. So there was a dental technician who was going to work that morning about 7 or so, and she saw a green station wagon. And inside the green station wagon was a man in his late 30s or late 20s, early 30s, who had long curly hair, a mustache, and he was wearing like a rough shirt, and he was giving her this really, really scary look. She was so frightened that she basically ran inside. Later on that afternoon, a maintenance man was coming around, and he's picking up cans, picking up trash around the parking lot, and he notices the body that had been rolled down the embankment, right where the car had been. Now they know it was right where the car had been, the green car, because when the police and the choppers and the news crews all showed up, it made such a commotion that this dental technician came outside and saw what was going on, and she went over and she told the police, yeah, this morning at that exact same spot, I saw this green car with this white guy. Now, it's my supposition that that white guy was James Comento, who lived right up, literally 5 minutes away, up Roxbury in Torreyview. Because I had met James Comento. My dad took CPR and first aid courses from him, and I remember him, and I remember that green station wagon. And you'll see this green station wagon pop up all over the place. And that Wayne was using the green station wagon. There was a green station wagon someone saw at the Shadowlawn studio. A green station wagon was out there on Bankhead at a talent show. They saw Wayne Williams loading equipment into it. There's a green station wagon that Louis Getter is seen getting into. Okay? There's a green station wagon at Riverview that almost runs this white couple over, and they see Wayne Williams and not James Comento, Nathaniel Cater in the car with Louis Getter, struggling. So I kind of jumped forward, but now I'll jump back. Now, also, right here on Magnolia, literally a block away from the police substation, which I think there's a police substation here, is where Jimmy Ray Payne was seen. Okay, he was last seen getting on to the Vine City rail station to go over here to go to the Omni. I don't know why you would not just walk that way, but anyway, so he was last seen going there. He was going to go to the Omni and sell some coins. Again, at the Omni, and that's where he was last seen. He wasn't seen again, and he was dumped in the river. Now, it's my contention that Jimmy Ray Payne was an assistant working with Wayne to gather kids. Here, let me know, put the word out there. We're looking for kids for our Gemini group. And that's what he did. And then when the noose was closing in with the FBI and Wayne knew the gig was up, that's when he got rid of Jimmy Ray Payne. Okay. And that's how he was able to convince Nathaniel Cater to come with him, because he's like, look, it's just you and me. Okay. No one else knows. Okay. He had convinced him. And that, we got to stick together. And that's what he did. Now, approximately right here, okay, is Gray Street. And this was the home. There was a home that were burnt down eventually and then bulldozed over. But right in this area, I don't have the exact address, but I believe it was right approximately here. Although I may be wrong. It may have been about right here. So there was a guy named Tom Terrell, Uncle Tom Terrell, and Larry Marshall. Okay. Now, and I don't know if this is the exact address. I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to go in this more detail. But Tom Terrell is this guy. He's an older man at that time. He was probably in his 60s. He was an open homosexual. There was another guy named Larry Marshall, also, I believe, either homosexual, bisexual. I think he had kids and stuff like that. And many of the kids had been seen by neighbors and Larry Marshall going to Tom Terrell's house. Matter of fact, some of them spent their last nights there. I don't believe Tom Terrell was involved in the murders. Now, I don't think he strangled the kids in his house, is what I mean. Because everybody knew he was hanging out with the kids. Everybody knew that. Okay? So it's not like he was trying to keep it secret. If you're going to kill people, you're going to keep that secret, okay? But he became a suspect. They watched Tom Terrell from like February 81 to I think about March of 81. They had him under surveillance, the Atlanta police, and they never saw him with the kids. They never saw him bringing kids back, killing them. None of the kids that disappeared during that time went to that house, okay? So they arrested him and put him in jail. Eventually, he gets cleared of the Atlanta child murders, he and Larry Marshall, but they get him on, abuse of children, having sex with children, stuff like that. And he goes to jail. I think he dies in jail. Before that, Larry Marshall, for some reason, about January, had fled Atlanta for Connecticut. I think Larry Marshall knew things about Wayne Williams and about the organization he was with and working with, and was afraid of getting killed like everyone else, okay? So about January, February, he flees. They come back. They get him. They bring him back. He goes to trial. He goes to jail. And again, the murders continued. Now, the people that like to blame, like the people that are the anybody but Wayne group, anybody but Wayne killed the kids, they like to cite Tom Terrell and Larry Marshall, okay, as the killers. But the fact is, you can't kill people when you're under surveillance. You can't kill people when you're in jail. You can't kill people while you're in prison. And the murders continued even when they got convicted and went to prison. Okay, so that tells you right there that they weren't the killers. It they may have, and I'll put it to you this way. Remember, I said you had to have this aggressive homosexual um, atmosphere to have the Atlanta child murders. You had to have this aggressive pedophile atmosphere to have the Atlanta child murders. But it doesn't mean that homosexuals or even pedophiles are killing the Atlanta children. Doesn't mean they're involved in the Atlanta child murders. Now, does that exonerate them? Maybe they knew about Wayne Williams. Maybe they knew he knew the kids. It doesn't mean they knew he was killing the kids. If they did know he was killing the kids, maybe they kept quiet because they were afraid of the backlash, first of all, from the media because they're homosexuals and have been having sex with the same kids. And they were also afraid of the same thing Larry Marshall was afraid of getting killed by Wayne or his organization. Okay. And again, you have to ask, why would these grown adults be afraid of, you know, 5'7" pudgy Wayne Williams? Well, it's not Wayne Williams, it's the group, the Gambinos, the Jimmy Gin organization, the power behind him. That's what you have to be afraid of. So that's why they didn't tell anybody. Okay. If these kids are coming around, surely they're talking to Larry Marshall. And there's a whole series of documents I have with an interview with Larry Marshall. It's very interesting. But why wouldn't Tom Terrell talk? Okay. And if you're going to go get arrested, why not make a plea deal? Get some time off, right? Well, because they know that even if they go to jail and they've made a plea deal, they could still be killed in prison because of this organization. So they kept quiet. That's my hypothesis. So that's Larry Marshall. And let's go to the next one here. Now, one thing I find that's interesting, which is very, very unnerving, is it says members of the Atlanta Child Murders Task Force hold a press conference at the Atlanta after Wayne Williams' trial to announce the closing of the task force in 1982. And then you see Lee Brown. I guess, what is that? I can't see that very well. Is that Slayton? And then there's Redding and all the guys involved in the task force. Now, this is inside the task force. And what I was looking for was the address of the task force. Now, I'd been by the task force, me and my friends. We went by there and, you know, tried to look in the windows. And of course, you couldn't look in the windows, but I got the address here. Okay. And I want to show you something. And we'll put it in context to what we've been talking about. So let's see, we've got about what, 16 minutes. Okay. So let's take a look at this address. And I was just thinking about this off the cuff and plugged it in, and I was like, oh my God. All right. So right there, okay, that's where the task force was at 350 West Peachtree. And Peachtree Street goes off that way, okay? And look, folks, actually, I'm sorry. That is not correct. That's 350 West Peachtree Place. And hold on one second. Oh, no, 350 West Peachtree Street. So if you look at that address right there, do any of these buildings look familiar? You're damn right it does. This street right here is Simpson. Literally 1, 2, 3 blocks away from the task force that has been assigned to track down the Atlanta child murderers is 3 blocks away from the studio the sound pit was at the exact same time that Wayne Williams was bringing the kids to, was auditioning the kids. If the task force members had stuck their head out the door, okay? Actually, I think this address is, I think it was actually right there, okay? So let's take a look at something. It was right here. Oh, and that's funny too, because right there, that's where the FBI and the IRS and the Social Security Administration is. But this building right here, this is a newer building, okay? But let's see, this should be Simpson, right? Yeah, this is Simpson. If they had stuck their head out the door, looked around the corner, they would probably see children that would eventually be murdered walking 2 blocks away with Wayne Williams into the Sound Pit Studios, into this building where my mom had worked in the early 70s with Michael Thieves. And Wayne Williams would bring them there. He'd record them, their voice. He'd take pictures of them. He'd take video of them or tape of them. He would have them sing, have them dance, and then eventually he would end up in the hot tub with them. Now, what the hell do you bring kids to an audition? You get them in the hot tub, okay? And this is where Jimmy Jen was hanging out most of the time and working. So, don't you find that kind of odd, folks? That 2 blocks away from the task force that is investigating the Atlanta child murders is where Wayne is bringing the children. I find that extremely odd. Anyway, that's just me. Maybe I'm crazy. Call me crazy. But, okay. So now we've gone there. We covered that. Let's see how much time we have. 47:54. Okay. Now we'll go up, back up Peachtree again, past the Fox Theater, past Colony Square, and we're going to go right up here. And right, is it right here? Yeah, we're going to go right here. So, actually, I'm sorry, we'll back up a little bit. Right here on West Peachtree, I'll go over this address exactly, but near Colony Square is the office of one of Wayne Williams' attorneys, Axum. Okay? And right here is two things. Now, right there is one of the oldest synagogues in Atlanta. It's called the Temple. And in the 1950s, somebody put a bomb in the temple and blew it up. Okay? You'll see this Jessica Tandy in that movie Driving Miss Daisy. She's going to the temple and then it gets blown up. Well, The defender, um, they caught the guy. They caught the two guys. And the attorney who defended them was none other than the father of Ed Garland. Okay. I'm not kidding you, folks. This is really what happened. I think his name's Robert Garland or Ed Garland Sr. or something. I can't remember his name, but I'll go over him a little bit later. But Ed Garland was a notorious attorney. Whenever there was a headline, he was always trying to get it. Now, whether he believed in the Ku Klux Klan cause or whatever, I don't know, but he defended them so well he got the case thrown out. He also, in the 1960s, ends up running for the Atlanta City Solicitor. Okay, the same position that Mary Welcome will occupy, or the Fulton County Solicitor. Yeah, in the 1970s, the one she is basically anointed to do by Ed Garland, um, Michael Thieves, and a large donation of money to Maynard Jackson. So Ed Garland's father was defending the Ku Klux Klan in the 1950s. Now, if you go down this road a little bit and take a left, we're just north of Colony Square. Okay. And let's see, let me get out of this. How much time do we have? About 9 minutes. All right. Let me see. I think is it right here? I think it's about right here. I don't know what happened to this area, but it used to be a place called White Columns. And this is WSB Channel 2. And I don't think this building existed back in the early 80s. It looks like something from the 90s, but it used to be there was a building called White Columns, and that's where WSB was at, but maybe they tore that down. But I remember you drive by on Peachtree and you would see the white columns of WSB. Now, WSB, okay, was the place where Wayne Williams worked as an overnight camera person, a night stalker, as they call them. I think white columns are right here. And he was under the protege of one of this ladies that worked there by the name of Jocelyn Dorsey. Now, she's not related to um, notorious Sheriff Dorsey, uh, but so she kind of took Wayne Williams under her wings. And what happened is they gave him a really, really nice camera, and he would go out at night. He back in 1977, maybe even 1976. But at least in 1977, he had his company that he incorporated called Southern Media Corporation. I think we're probably going to end up right here. And so he would run around at night, taking pictures of car wrecks, fires, murders, all these things. He had a police scanner, and he had a police car, a police-looking car. It was a blue Ford Fury. It had police lights. It had a police scanner, and he would cruise all around Atlanta looking for stories, mostly in Southwest and Southeast Atlanta. Okay. He knew all the back streets. He could get in and get out. He could know by listening to the scanner where the police were located and how to get around them. That's where he honed his skill. And there's a really, really good movie came out about 10 years ago called Night Stalker. And it was about this crazy guy that was willing to do anything to become number one, and he would push the boundaries. Like one time, he had heard on a scanner there had been a shooting reported, and before the police got there at the address, he got there, was going around inside filming. These people had been shot, and some were still alive, and they died right there. And he got there before the police did. Okay, and it was crazy. So what happened with Wayne is he got in trouble. Not only in 1976 did he get arrested for pulling over people and impersonating a police officer, okay, with his Ford Fury car and his lights. He got arrested for that, and that is one of the first signs of that they look for in the profile. If someone had been arrested, if they were impersonating police officers, things like that, figures of authority. It's my contention through the Freudian theory is that Wayne was uh, trying to encapsulate a person that had abused him. He found power in impersonating a police officer. Okay, that's what I think. That's what was going on there. Unfortunately, they threw out the charge. He never got. It was like I think he paid a fine, and those charges got thrown out. That's an early sign of some kind of problem going on there. They should have pursued that. So what he did is he would go out, film these things, bring back the tape canister, leave it, and then they would pay him if they used the story. Now, sometimes they wouldn't use the story. So he would go out at night, come in about 7 in the morning, according to Jocelyn Dorsey. Sometimes they wouldn't use the story. So Wayne didn't want to waste his time. So what he was doing is he was taking the story, going down to the Atlanta Daily World, going to other news stations and selling them that story. Well, he was using WSB's equipment and they got pissed about it. Now, Jocelyn Dorsey will tell you, and people at WSB will tell, Wayne never worked for us. He was just a contractor. But Jocelyn Dorsey will tell you that they fired him and she had to fire him. So how can you fire someone that doesn't work for you unless they're working for you? Okay. If they're just a contractor, you're just going to say, no, we don't want you coming in here anymore. I guess that's firing, right? But she specifically said she had to fire him and she felt uncomfortable about that, and their relationship dropped off after that. She knew them so well that she had talked to his mother, okay? And that Wayne was a miracle child, that they had him late in life. They didn't think they were going to have children and all this stuff. So she knew the family pretty well, okay? So when they found out it was Wayne Williams, it shocked all of them. Now, you'll also hear in the Atlanta Monster, you hear Monica Kaufman, okay? I think she has another last name now. But Monica Kaufman was the standard anchor in Atlanta during the Atlanta child murders and during the 80s. And always remember Monica Kaufman, okay? But she doesn't think that Wayne did it. She thinks there were other killers. She thinks the police screwed up, okay? Or she's not certain that Wayne did it. There's also another reporter that came along maybe a little bit later in the 80s. Actually, there was two other reporters. There was one by the name of Mark Picard. And I love Mark Picard. He wasn't an anchor. He was a field reporter. He would go out and interview people. He followed this story. He had an extensive bunch of interviews and contacts in the Atlanta child murders. You also see him interviewing James Comento, okay, who had tried to set up this emergency first aid. I don't know what he was trying to set up and get the city of Atlanta to pay for it, and they declined that in November of 1980. And then Mark Picard does an interview with him talking about that. I've got a video on that. But Mark Picard, whenever they would find a body, there would be Mark Picard. Okay, he followed this story very, very closely. When Wayne in the news media, Wayne gets surrounded by the news media, his father goes out and points at Mark Picard and does the finger, come this way, and he goes in, and Wayne gives an exclusive interview just to Mark Picard on tape. Mark Picard did that interview, took it back to his producer, and never saw that tape again. And then Wayne does another interview where he brings in all the news media and passes out his resume. It's totally insane. Okay. There was also another reporter, I think came along in the late 80s by the name of Dale Cardwell. And you'll hear Dale Cardwell talk about, we're out of time. I'll pick that up later on, and we'll continue from there. All right, take care.